What is up, everybody, and welcome to my review of episode 6 of Convicting a Murderer, which is airing on Daily Wire Plus. It is the rebuttal series to Netflix's Making a Murderer. Before we jump into my review, go give me a follow on Twitter, @AllegedlyAShow. The amount of information that is coming out about both Convicting a Murderer and Making a Murderer is unreal. If you've never had Twitter, if you don't use Twitter, I highly recommend getting it if you're at all interested in this case. The amount of information that is flowing over there right now is crazy. So get it, give me a follow @AllegedlyAShow, and come join the conversation. All right, here we go. This is episode 6 of Convicting a Murderer. It is about the key and the license plate. It states the episode is details starting to emerge about Andrew Colburn's suspicious license plate call and the key that was allegedly planted in Stephen Avery's bedroom. Additionally, the Making a Murderer filmmakers are called out for rearranging court testimony to better serve their narrative. Alright, so the episode starts out with Andrew Colburn talking about how he found out about Making a Murderer, how he found out about the documentary. He was told by whoever told him that it was going to be a flash in the pan. Boy, did that turn out to be an inaccurate statement. Said he got a lot of really bad phone calls, death threats, and they play some of them, and it is absolutely terrible. I'd feel bad for the guy, but what they did to Brendan Dassey was way worse. They state that one of the main reasons that Andrew Colburn gets all the hate that he gets is because of the license plate call. They air a clip of the call. They talk about how people think he was looking at the car when the call was made. Ken Kratz says it was something they didn't pay any attention to whatsoever until it was brought up in court. People think the call was made on November 3rd, 2005. Now, Candace Owens states because he was on the stand over a year later, it's okay that Andrew Colburn didn't remember exact dates and times. It's a murder trial. People's lives are on the line. How you look at an officer is on the line. How serious an officer takes his job is on the line. Do you not take notes? Do you not make a report during a murder investigation? It's absolutely crazy to think that all of this is going on and nobody's writing anything down with dates and times or anything. It is a murder trial where a 25-year-old girl lost her life, but yet they're not supposed to take down specific notes or remember specific things. If you are not, I don't expect everybody to remember every single little detail either, but I would imagine you're taking notes, you're filing police reports, like something. Come on, this is a murder investigation. Your job as a police officer is to be as thorough as possible and make sure you're doing everything correctly and all of the truthful information is being reported. Should he have remembered everything? Maybe not, maybe not. But he should have had notes and reports and dates and times written down. I've watched many trials where the officer on the stand has a book where he's like, I have to refer to my notes. Yes, this was done on this date. That sort of thing. For the record, I do not believe that Andrew Colburn or any of the police officers involved had anything to do with the killing of Teresa Halbach. I understand that's a narrative that's out there, but that's not something that I believe. Rookie Andy has a great quote here. He states, "We're not going to do anything wrong until we get caught." And he's speaking about law enforcement there. Andrew Colburn said he used his cell phone because he wasn't going to put the plate number over the radio yet because people have scanners. I don't know if that's still a thing. Are scanners still a thing? I think you can have apps on your phone maybe. But back then people had police scanners and could get information. So that's the reason he said that he didn't put the plate number out over the radio. Candace stated that because it was a year... Now, here's where things get a little funny. Candace states that because it was a year later, remember I just said that, that's why he didn't remember any dates and times of the call. But Andrew Colburn is here talking about... But Andrew Colburn is now talking about what he did on those days off. And that would be however many years later he was interviewed for this doc. I don't know the date and time of when this interview with Andrew Colburn took place, but it's a minimum of 10 years probably after all of this was done. He remembers what he did on his day off, but he can't remember the time, the date that he made that phone call, but he remembers what he did on his day off. Make it make sense, Candace. It's one or the other. Either a year later, he can't remember the date and time, and that's okay, but over a decade later, he can remember what he did on the day off. Makes absolutely no sense. Andrew Colburn is essentially making that statement by Candace Owens look real dumb. Candace Owens also makes no sense here again. She states that if the defense wanted to know the date and time of the call, they could have requested it. So why didn't Ken Kratz also request the date and time of that call? If he could shut down that narrative, make it make sense, Candace. If it was such a big deal, this license plate call and time, it was being debated so much, why didn't Ken Kratz request the date and time of this call so he could show up in court and be like, look, this is the date and time this call actually took place. Go suck it, defense team. Like, come on. Sean Reck said that you made changes to the documentary. You probably should have changed that part. They talk about how Rookie found out that the call was made on November 3rd, 2005. They claim Making a Murderer used different shots of Andy and placed them out of order. What they are doing in Making a Murderer is called establishing shots or reaction shots, and they're not always used in order. They're used to show people's reactions to various things. It's done all the time. It's not really, it's not something unique to this documentary. No, they talk about like his body language and things are different with the way these clips are shown out of order. But to me, a regular person with zero knowledge of body language, I have no idea how it works. They say that it makes Andrew Colburn look guilty. But I'm going to assume most of the people out there that watched Making a Murderer have absolutely no idea about body language, what it means, how it works. So unless you're a body language expert, I don't think that changes anything whatsoever. They air a clip of Andrew Colburn saying yes to a question, but stayed in reality he was answering yes to a different question, and they did show that. So yes, that part was definitely seems to be out of order, but the first part doesn't really matter. His sitting on the stand and his expressions didn't really mean anything to me. It was just him sitting there, like watching. It didn't change anything to me whatsoever. But again, him saying yes to that question that was out of order isn't anything new. Anything that anybody that looked into Making a Murderer, post Making a Murderer, that looked into the case after the documentary aired, knew that this had happened. So that isn't new information. It might be new information to anybody that didn't look into anything post-documentary, which is probably most people, or it does make everything look really bad to people just watching Convicting a Murderer for the first time. Anjanette Levy stated that Stephen Avery started the I was framed angle from day one. They say Stephen changed his story about Teresa Halbach being in his house. They air a clip of Stephen Avery saying, yeah, she's been in the house a long time ago. She came to the door. He states that she wasn't in the house the day of. It sounds like that she only ever came up to the door. It doesn't sound like she was ever actually in the trailer. Now, that could just be me not understanding exactly what Stephen Avery meant, but it sounds like to me that she was only ever to the door and not actually inside his trailer. They talk about the burn barrels and the evidence that was found in them. Candace Owens states the original filmmakers never explained why they left out some of the most important evidence. My guess is that it most likely is because it didn't mean as much to them as she's making it out to be, and it didn't fit the story that they were telling. Much like why Candace Owens is including it, because it fits the narrative of the story that Candace Owens and the Daily Wire wants to tell. And yes, it is storytelling. The creator, I've said this from the beginning, that both of them are just stories driven by the narrative that the creator of each documentary wanted to tell. The Making a Murderer documentary people had a narrative they want to tell. The Convicting a Murderer people have a narrative they want to tell. They use the term storytelling all the time. And the creator, director, the driving force behind Convicting a Murderer came out yesterday or the day before and said the same thing to me on Twitter. Sean Reck stated, and it's on my Twitter, you can go look, I'm not making it up. The creator, Sean Reck, said Candace Owens made changes to this particular documentary, Convicting a Murderer, in order to fit the narrative and brand and the storytelling that the Daily Wire wanted it to put out. So yes, it is a story. They are telling a story. They are telling the narrative and story they want to tell. They move on to the alleged planted key. Candace states that this is the biggest piece of evidence to this day that viewers think was planted. They talk about the number of searches it took before the key was found. So, Dan O'Donnell, I'm pretty sure that's his name. Dan O'Donnell, man, is he ever over animated every single time he talks? It's pretty funny. He makes a giant production out of every word that he says, and he's trying to make everything sound sarcastic towards Making a Murderer. But it's not really working, and it's kind of strange. It's really funny to see him be so animated with everything that he says. At least like Andrew Colburn and Thomas Fassbender and Candace Owens are very professional in the way they're conducting their interviews. Dan kind of reminds me of like angry Kermit the Frog, if you know if you know what I mean. I mean, that's what I think every time I see the guy. I don't know. They state there weren't 7 searches of Stephen Avery's trailer, but rather 7 entries. What do you think they were doing? They were going in and, you know, like having coffee and donuts? Make it make sense. I'm begging you, make it make sense. They state each entry was a search for a different item. They state that like 4.5 seconds after they state that they weren't searches and just entries. They went in and got different items every time. So yes, they were searching Stephen Avery's trailer. And the last time they went in was to get his, his adult magazine collection, all of his Playboys, all of his Vanity Fair magazines. I hope they wore gloves. Andrew Colburn talks about how he thinks the key fell out. Andy Colburn talks about how they can't explain how there's change on top of the cabinet. They can't explain how the change didn't move when they were putting stuff back in or looking in the cabinet. Andrew Colburn states people never proved how they would have got the key originally in order to plant it. That's a great question. How do you think if you believe the key was planted, how do you think they got the key to plant it? Let me know. I'd love to see some discussion on that. I've seen a bunch of different theories out there. But how do you think they got the key to plant it if you believe the key was planted? Ken Kratz said the key didn't help his case, it made his case harder. Thomas Fassbender said he's heard recently that Ken Kratz was upset how the key was found, but said he doesn't remember Ken Kratz saying anything originally. They talk about the DNA on the key, how Stephen's DNA was found on the key, but Teresa Halbach's DNA wasn't found on the key. Ken Kratz said he needed to get Avery off the street, so he charged him with felon in possession of a firearm. They state there is no way Stephen Avery's blood got from the sink to the RAV4, but if you watch season 2, which they don't talk about at all, they don't talk about anything of when Kathleen Zellner took over this case. They're just discussing season 1 of Making a Murderer, probably because they can't refute season 2. They explain that in season 2. Kathleen Zellner explains how that is a definite possibility. They air more of the conversation between Ken Kratz and Rookie. Ken Kratz seems so aggressive and so angry. It's wild. Calm down, Ken. Have a conversation. Chill. Have a conversation. It's not so hard. Calm down. The next episode is about the blood vial. Woo! And Candace Owens has some very strong words about about that blood vial. Seems like it's going to be a very interesting episode. But what did you think? What do you think of this episode of Convicting a Murderer? The only thing that I can say so far that I maybe didn't know, and I don't remember that I didn't know, but I can't remember remembering, so I'm going to go with this is the only piece of new information so far that they've put out, is they found the part that the key clicks into in the car. That's the only thing I think I may have not have known before, or it's just not important enough that I remembered, but it's possibly new information. I'm not sure, but we'll say that it's new information. But let me know what you think. What do you think of episode 6 of Convicting a Murderer on Daily Wire Plus? Let me know. Leave some comments below. I hope you're having a good day, and I will see you again soon.